Hey there, future medical professionals. Thanks for being here today. In this video, I'll be talking to you about the circulatory system. Now, hopefully, by now you've learned a little bit about blood, what blood does, what is in blood, and different blood types. Today, we're going to be talking about how blood moves throughout the body. So please join me on this wild ride through the circulatory system. So the circulatory system is what blood moves through in your body. What a lot of people don't realize is that blood is always within blood vessels when it's in the body. And those blood vessels would be arteries, veins, or capillaries. Arterioles are small branches of arteries, and venules are small branches of veins. Now, if the blood escapes those blood vessels, then it's called a hemorrhage. A hemorrhage is when blood leaves those broken blood vessels. So to be a little bit more specific about those blood vessels, we'll start with arteries. Those are any blood vessel that carry blood away from the heart, with arterioles being small branches that still are carrying blood away from the heart. Arteries and arterioles have a similar structure. They have smooth muscle, which allows them to constrict or dilate, which will control where blood is going in the body, whether it's to the intestines, whether it's to the arm muscles, whether it's more to the head or to the legs. It can control where blood is going based on where it is needed. Arteries also have to have a lot of elastic tissue, and that's because since they are connected to the heart, since they're taking blood away from the heart, they need to absorb that pressure of the heart pumping. So they need to be elastic to absorb the pressure. There's a condition where the arteries lose elasticity called atherosclerosis. That's where it's called hardening of the arteries. And the problem there is that if they lose that elasticity, then the pressure from the heart can cause them to rupture, and that would result in a hemorrhage. Veins, on the other hand, carry blood back to the heart. No matter where it's coming from, if it's on its way back to the heart, it's traveling in venules or veins. Those do not experience the same amount of pressure as arteries, and so there's not elastic tissue. They can't control where the blood is flowing because it's all going back to the heart, and so there is very little smooth muscle. But what veins do have are valves, and the valves are essentially little flaps within them. So if blood is flowing up through a tube, a vein here, the valves are flaps of tissue that would open up to allow blood to flow up, but as it tries to flow back down, would close shut. And that prevents blood from going backward in that blood vessel because the pressure is so much lower in veins. And those work up until there's a condition called varicose veins. And varicose veins are where there are veins that have either become bent or have become widened, and it makes it so that those flaps of the valves no longer line up if the vein is bent, or it makes it so that the flaps don't touch anymore, and so they can't prevent the blood from going backward. When blood is stationary or it goes backward, then it is more likely to clot, and that's part of the reason why you're asked or encouraged to move around on long flights or to not sit in one place for too long, because the muscles squeezing can squeeze blood through those veins as long as the valves keep it from going backward. In between arteries and veins are capillaries, and those are very small blood vessels. They're microscopic. They would sometimes have only a single red blood cell passing through them, single file, and they have only one layer of tissue, and that's a very thin layer of epithelial tissue. It's simple squamous tissue. And what that does is it allows for diffusion back and forth. That's the function of capillaries, is to allow diffusion back and forth, things out of the blood and things into the blood. Whether that's gases like CO2 and oxygen diffusing in and out of the blood, whether it's nutrients diffusing in and out of the blood, whether it's wastes, hormones, or white blood cells to fight infection. The circulatory system is referred to as a dual circuit, and the heart is referred to as a dual pump. The reason for that is that the entire circulatory system, a blood cell would essentially go back and forth to the heart 2 times to go all the way through the circulatory system. And those are two different circuits. So it would go from the heart to the lungs and back to the heart. And then it would go from the heart all throughout the body systems and back to the heart, two circuits. And so the reason why the heart is called a dual pump is because it has two sides that each specialize in pushing blood through one of those circuits. Those two circuits are the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. Pulmonary means that it has to do with the lungs, and so the pulmonary circuit are the blood vessels that take blood from the heart to the lungs, where they would leave carbon dioxide to be breathed out and take in from the lungs oxygen to bring to the body's tissues, and then go back to the heart again. The systemic circuit is where blood that has oxygen now comes from the lungs, and it's being pumped away from the heart to the body's tissues, whether it's your brain, whether it's your muscles, whether it's your organs, whatever those tissues are that require oxygen, they would get it through the systemic circuit. And the systemic circuit is where the blood is going to deliver its oxygen, and it's going to come back to the heart lacking oxygen and needing to go back into the pulmonary circuit. It's the right side of the heart that powers the pulmonary circuit, and the left side of the heart that powers the systemic circuit, which you'll see when we study structure of the heart is why the muscle on the left side of the heart is so much stronger, because it is pushing blood throughout all of the systems, whereas the right side of the heart is pushing blood just to the lungs and back. Now here's a color-coded schematic of blood flow through the two circuits. You'll typically see these systems color-coded, with red being blood that is fresh in oxygen and blue being blood that is deficient in oxygen. And that's really just a convention at this point, that blood doesn't really turn blue. It really is more like turning bright red when it has oxygen and dark red when it lacks oxygen. It's never blue. The fact that some veins look blue is really just how the skin and the veins absorb or scatter light, and it doesn't even look blue for all skin tones. So while this is convention, in real life, the blood is not red or blue, it's bright red versus dark red for oxygenated and deoxygenated respectively. At the top are the four parts of the heart. And then the bottom, on one side, is the pulmonary circuit, and on the other side is the systemic circuit, both the arteries, veins, and capillaries that are in each. The black arrows here show the order that a blood cell would travel through those different structures. And the arrows here going from veins to the part of the heart that would receive that blood cell. And so you can see, no matter where we start, we'll start here at right atrium. Everything in this box represents structures of the heart. That blood cell would start in the right atrium, move to the right ventricle, where it would be pumped out to the pulmonary trunk. That is the largest artery in the pulmonary circuit. It branches into two pulmonary arteries that go to the lungs, where they branch into pulmonary arterioles, and finally pulmonary capillaries, where the blood changes color from deoxygenated to oxygenated. So here at the pulmonary capillaries, the blood is depositing carbon dioxide to be breathed out and taking in fresh oxygen that is breathed in to carry to the body systems that require oxygen to function and live. Once picking up oxygen, the blood would take the pulmonary veins to go back to the heart, specifically the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood would move down to the left ventricle, where it would be pumped out of the heart through the aorta, and it would branch to go to the head, to the arms, torso, legs, in systemic arteries. In systemic capillaries is where the blood would be depositing the oxygen and picking up carbon dioxide from those tissues that have generated them. The blood changes color and is now deoxygenated and comes back to the heart, lacking oxygen and needing to go through the system again. Well, thanks for making it to the end. I hope that you enjoyed learning about the circulatory system. I hope it clarified a few things. Maybe you learned something new. Maybe it really just reinforced and fortified what you knew already. You'll be doing projects about this to further your understanding and to show what you've learned. And then we'll be dissecting hearts so that you can see how blood would move through them. I hope you've enjoyed this and I hope it's been clear enough. If not, of course, as always, ask questions of your instructor. I'll see you next time.